This is the Your Career Story podcast, and you're listening to episode 64. Qualified but can't land the job? Here's what you're doing wrong. Welcome to Your Career Story podcast, a show that's designed for rockstar professionals looking for that extra booster shot of confidence in their careers. Whether you're trying to get clarity on a job transition, want some work-life balance inspiration, or need a strategy to snag that promotion or raise, this podcast is for you. I'm your host, Jena, ex-Wall Streeter turned startup junkie who now coaches hundreds of clients, empowering them to take back control of the job search and land their dream job. So sit back, grab a glass of wine, and prepare yourself for your weekly boost of career confidence. Hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of the Your Career Story podcast. I'm your host, Jena, and I am so excited to be with you here this Wednesday. So today we're going to be talking a little bit about the things to just a little bit of troubleshooting. So I get a lot of people that will come to me and say, this isn't working, Jena, or this isn't working, and I can't land the job, and I cannot figure out why I can't get the job. I see I'm qualified for this role. I'm, tweaked my resume exactly for it. Clearly, my experience will show them that I am qualified for this role. Why did they reject me with their very blanket statement, generic email? So if this has happened to you, you are not alone. This is a very frustrating part of the job search process, especially as we've moved more into the digital age where applicant tracking systems are being used more and AI is being used more, which I have my own very, very strong opinions about how I feel about that and how I think that's actually really unwise for most companies. I understand why they're using it, but it can just cause a lot of problems. So we're going to talk today a little bit about why you may not be landing the job. And when I think about the job search process, I used to run track begrudgingly, actually, in high school. I did not love running track. I did not love running in cross country, but I had my high school pre-AP history teacher was actually the track coach. And supposedly the rumor around campus was that you had to take his classes and you had to be on the track team in order to get an A in his classes. So that's why I did track team. Anyways, I digress. So when I think about the job search process and where things can go wrong, I think a little bit about like a track and where there's different hurdles. So typically, if you're not getting to the interview stage, there's something wrong with the way that you're applying or your resume or marketing material function. If you're getting to the interview stage and you're getting through a couple of interviews, but maybe you don't make it to the final round interview, it's usually there's a problem with either the value proposition and how you're describing it or just your interview skills in general. And then finally, if you're getting to kind of an offer stage and you either don't land that offer or for whatever reason, it's not a really great offer for you, there's usually some other parts within that conversation process that you are missing out on. So there's a couple of different hurdles that keep us from actually being successful in the job search process and successful in landing the job. So we're going to talk through a couple of specific reasons that I have found people often will not land the job. So we're actually going to talk through my top 4, and you can listen for yourself and think through, is this what I'm doing? Maybe this is the reason why I am not getting the jobs that I want, or I'm not getting the door places. And we're going to talk through all those different places. So the number one reason that I find that people are not able to land their job is actually the very beginning. They're very, very incredibly haphazard in their job search. So what I mean like this is this scenario typically happens. I'll have someone come to me and they'll say, Jena, so I ask them how they do their job search. And they say, well, I scroll through LinkedIn a little bit, I get the alerts, and I apply sometimes to things. Or they'll say, I scroll through LinkedIn, or I scroll through all the different job search platforms. I might do that for like 5 hours one day and then I get super exhausted and I never want to do it again. Or there's really no clear process or plan. There's no organization in it. You aren't consistent. That's an example of being haphazard in your search. Where I see a lot of people go wrong is because you're so haphazard in your search and because there's no system, there's no process, there's no clear methodology, if you will, to go from point A to point B and to really organize all the different positions that you're applying for, why you're applying for them, prioritizing them in the right way, really creating a system to find the right opportunities and then apply for them. You're going to feel really overwhelmed and you're going to have no capabilities of actually following up properly, of getting in touch with people. of being able to effectively understand where you are in the process with certain positions. And it's going to harm you on the long run. So one of the biggest things in the very beginning, before we even really applied for a position, if you are feeling like you're just scrolling through LinkedIn, you don't have a consistent plan or process, you're really only focused on, applying, like kind of shooting from the hip and applying to the next thing that you see and then like not looking at it for a while, like that's a huge, huge issue. So what I want you to think about, creating a process or a plan for you to get organized in your job search. I want you to be doing it consistently. I want you to be able to know exactly where you are on certain job opportunities. And in our Recruit the Employer, the course, which is actually launching in 2 weeks, and we are super excited for it. So Recruit the Employer, the courses can teach you exactly how to do this. We have a full methodology in there, as well as some tools that we recommend to help keep you organized and give you some kind of time management tips and productivity tips to keep this focused and in tune and in process. Because this is a really, really important piece. If you are not organized in your search, you're not going to be organized as you get further down the road with some opportunities if they do bring you in. So another thing that I want to remind you of where this comes into play too is when you're haphazard in your search, typically what people will do is what I call the binge approach. And so they're like, okay, I'm going to muster up all of my energy and I'm going to job search today. Like I said, you do about 5 hours and then you get super burnt out, super exhausted, and then you don't do it again for another week. Well, that's a huge problem. You have to stay consistent. I would rather you do 5 days of applying to maybe 2 jobs, but doing that consistently and helping that build up over time than doing 5 hours of job searching and applying to maybe 10 positions. Because the consistency will help create a habit, and the habit's going to help you in the long run. Similar to how you can't, I know for myself, if I'm ever trying to go on a diet, there's no way that you can actually successfully get rid of gluten, dairy, meat, alcohol, sweets, everything, and then be like, I'm feeling totally fine. And then what happens is you fall off the wagon, right? So similar things happen with the job search. You want to make sure that you make it digestible, you make it small, you make it actionable, and and it makes you feel like you're making progress. So one of the biggest things and one of the most frustrating things about the job search process is it feels like you're not making progress. And that leads us into actually the second thing that you may be doing that's keeping you from actually landing the job. It's relying on applying online. And so what this looks like is the majority of how you are communicating with employers is just by applying through a portal online. Here's what I do not love about this. Typically what happens is you clean up your resume, you think it goes perfect, and then you drop it into the applicant tracking system and you pray to the recruiting gods that someone will pick it up and the right person will see you and they will bring you in and you have all these hopes and dreams. And then almost immediately you get a automated email back that says, I'm sorry, but we are checking out other candidates for this. And you're like, what gives? This is so annoying. I cannot deal with this. It makes you feel like you're really out of control. I do not love that part about the job search process. And the methodology that we teach over here is all about being proactive in the job search and really taking back that control that the employers have taken from you that I hate. I hate that part of it. So I feel like that with applying online, and we talk with our folks in the Recruit the Employer, the course about this, is you cannot just rely on applying online. If you are doing that, you are going to be failing in your job search. So if you've been doing that, don't shame yourself. Just realize that you've got to diversify the ways in which that you are applying to jobs, getting in touch with people. You've got to be utilizing your network. You've got to be really, really focused on building relationships that you can develop over time. We teach you how to do that in Recruit the Employer, the course as well. But here's the deal. 60% of jobs are found from networking, not from applying online. And so it may seem because, there's so many jobs available online that everybody should only apply online and that should be the way that it is. I think for a lot of organizations, specifically hiring managers, they want to have a say in it. And I have found for myself personally that when I have been interested in a position, I have never really actually gotten a job from applying online. I'll give you a perfect example. When I was trying to move from the New York Stock Exchange and was trying to work at the Muse, I actually applied online to their own applicant tracking system. I actually don't even know if they were using one at the time. But I applied online, and of course, they didn't take me because I had a finance resume. It made no sense as to why I was applying for a position that was predominantly a sales role. And I said, well, forget this. I'm going to find a way to weasel my way into this company. I'm going to be proactive, not reactive. even though that was a little reactive in the moment. But I really wanted to make sure that I had more control over the process, and I did not trust these computers. So if you don't trust these computers, you need to listen up to what I'm saying right now. So I met someone who met someone who met someone, and basically got my resume in front of the CEO of the Muse. And she was the one who agreed to bring me in, and they interviewed me, and I ended up landing the job. Now, I never would have landed that job if I just was like, when I got the rejection email and was like, oh, you know what? They're probably right. I'm not qualified. Even though I think that I am, I could do the job. I believe I'm qualified. If I just left it at that, I would not even be talking to you guys here today. Because as some of you that have been following me for a while, you know that the Muse is a huge part of my story of launching my business and taking it full time. And I'm so grateful for the women there. But if you are just relying on applying online and listening to that, you are going to be not successful in the job search process. So first, you got to get yourself organized. Second, you cannot just rely on applying online. There are only so many times you can tweak your resume. And that, quite frankly, is not the best use of your time. If you've been listening to me for a while, you know that I hammer home networking. We have a whole entire episode dedicated to online networking. So go back through our episodes and check that one out. Also, in Recruit the Employer, the course, we give you templates. We give you scripts. We tell you exactly how to reach out to somebody, who to reach out to at a company. We take all the guesswork out of that to make sure that you feel equipped and you can just do what you do best and focus on doing the actions, following the process. The other thing is there are plenty of out-of-the-box ways to get in touch with the right people. So it's not just online. And even in the midst of Corona, there are very interesting ways to get in touch with people, and we teach you how to do that. Switching jobs can be a very confusing process. Is now the right time? Is it too soon? How do you make sure you do it without burning bridges? What if there's a downturn in the economy? Is it still smart to explore new opportunities? While everybody's story is a bit different, there are some key red alarms that will help guide you as you discern if a career move makes sense for you. Sometimes you don't need to overthink a decision, but just decide to move forward. I've created a handy-dandy guide to help you discern if now is the right time to start looking elsewhere. Head on over to www.jenaviviano.com/change to snag my guide, 6 ways to know it's the right time to change jobs. In this guide, I'll walk you through how to understand your motivations for moving jobs, tips on how to start exploring a new move, examples of when not to move, and journal prompts to help you see where you're actually stuck. Again, head on over to www.jenaviviano.com/change to get your guide today and see if a job change is on the horizon for you. When you're done with the guide, reach out to me on LinkedIn. I can't wait to hear what you figured out. All right, back to the episode. Number 3. So the third reason that you may not be landing a job. Here's what you may be doing wrong. This is a big one. So obviously we've talked about the practicalities of making sure that you're organized, that you have a system in place, you have a process, clear process. Don't be disorganized. We've talked about how you can't just rely on applying online because that's a big fat waste of your time. And you really should only be doing a small part of your job searching should be doing that of just applying online. And the other part should be in the networking space and really thinking of outside of the box ways to get in touch with the right people at those companies. And then the third thing really is you are not differentiating yourself enough. So let's say you are qualified for a position, but there's nothing that differentiates you from the other person's resume that they're looking at. And so this is where, again, that networking really comes into play, but it's thinking through what makes me unique. We talk about this a lot, and I think this is so important, is understanding what is my secret sauce? What makes me unique? Why would someone want to hire me over another individual? What can I bring to the table that's different? The worst thing that you can do is, especially if you're in an interview and you've kind of got past the hurdle of getting in the door. And now once you've gotten the door, you've got to prove yourself, right? And so where a lot of people mess up is they don't really share why they are the right person for the position. They just share a lot of tasks or like subjects that they are good at or skills that they can do. And really at the end of the day, yes, an employer cares about that, but ultimately the question that they're asking either subconsciously or consciously is, will this person be able to help our company and our team or me specifically reach XYZ goals? Your job throughout the entire process, whether you're reading the job description all the way through to your first, second, third, fourth, potentially fifth conversation with people at that companies to understand what do they need? How do I make sure they know I am the person the only person that can do what they need to do and give them the results that they need to do. So first, you need to believe in yourself that you're capable and that you're qualified. That's a whole different podcast episode that we could talk about. But the second thing is you really need to be able to solidify and get super clear, ask the right questions in those interviews and ask the right questions to the recruiters and really dissect that job description to understand how can I differentiate myself? What are they really asking for? What do they really need? And how am I the person, the only person for that position? When you think about companies that are differentiating themselves, I love that there's so many companies nowadays that are differentiating themselves based on their culture, perhaps. That's a point of differentiation. They're differentiating themselves on their product line. You need to think very similarly to these companies that are doing that. Think about how you can take the principles that, especially if you're in marketing, y'all, you should be able to do this. If you have done this for companies, you can do it for yourself. And if you need help with that, again, we have the tools and the systems and you know that. So when I think about actually a really cool company nowadays that I really admire from afar, and I actually know a lot of women that want to work there and find that they have an interesting product, is Away Luggage. So they took a very antiquated system, a really boring industry, revamped it, and really provided a product and an experience, a brand around their luggage. I have their luggage. Is their luggage any better than something else I could buy? Yes and no. But it's more I'm buying into the brand. I'm buying into what they stand for. I'm buying into the brand of it, right? So that's what a company is doing when they're hiring you. They're buying into your brand and what you can bring to the table. Are you thinking about yourself in that same way? My guess would be you're probably not. And if you're not thinking like that, could be one of the reasons that you're not landing the job. You have to first understand what your secret sauce is, though. This is one of the most, if I can tell you nothing besides network all the time, is you need to know what you're good at. So I think a lot of us really struggle, and if this is you, that's okay, really knowing what are we good at. And I think this is a lot of deep work that I can't even tell my clients exactly what. I can give them suggestions. I can say, hey, I think, look at all the things that you've done. This is a thread throughout everything. We talk about that a lot. But I think also is at the end of the day, you need to evaluate and reflect and do some journaling. That's hard work, but you've got to do it and take the time to do it to understand what am I good at? What am I doing when I feel like I'm thriving or I'm in the zone? For me, I can give a perfect example. And I'm always thinking about this. As the CEO of this company, I am thinking about how do I get more into my zone of genius? And I first have to get into my zone of genius, I have to know what my zone of genius is. And for me, I really feel like I'm in the zone when I am creating something, whether I'm creating a web page or I'm writing a podcast episode or I am writing copy for our website. I really feel like I'm in the zone when I'm getting to brainstorm, create, and build. I'm probably not as much in the zone when I have to be dealing with, the financials of the business, or I'm not really in the zone when I have to do ticky-tacky little things or try to set up all of our systems in the back end. That is not my zone of genius. We have to hire out for that. So it's for you recognizing in your own career, if you could think back on all the things that you're really good at and that people have praised you for and that also you feel good doing. Because there have been instances in my career when I've been praised for something that I was good at doing that I hated doing. That's not what we're talking about here. So you can't use somebody else's opinions of you to define what you're good at. That can be supporting evidence, but it shouldn't be the number one thing. So, and I've had people who said I'm good at something that I didn't really feel like I was good at. So you have to be very careful with outside influences. I think it's a great starting point. It shouldn't be the end point. Hopefully we're tracking. And the other thing that I'll get with people will ask me and will say, okay, Jena, we need to know what differentiates us. What are companies looking for? And I hate that question because you're missing the point if you're asking that question. Because you need to be looking internal first and then let what's coming up internally go externally. And so I could give you a list of all these different qualities certain companies are looking for, but 1, every company is going to be looking for something different. 2, every role is going to be looking for something different. And 3, you've got to do a little work on your end to figure out what that is. That's part of your job in the job search process. And so it's not always cookie cutter, and you need to be thinking about very proactively what differentiates you. You guys know I love to give you some firm but kind feedback. So I'm giving it to you straight. There is no cookie cutter way to answer that question. You've got to figure out what it is for you. If you need help with that, again, we have our tools and process to help you with that. All right, number 4. So we've covered the haphazard in the search. Maybe that's why you can't land the job. The second piece is you're only relying on applying online and tweaking your resume and hoping and praying to the recruiting gods that someone will pick it up. Number 3 is you aren't differentiating yourself. And we talked a lot about knowing what your secret sauce is, but that also, quite frankly, plays into how does your resume look? How does your LinkedIn look? What are they saying? How are you presenting yourself in an interview? For myself, I went to interviews on in a finance world that was everyone wore like a black or gray suit. I wore some color because I wanted to be different. I wanted to be differentiated. I wanted them to remember me. Besides being a female, because there weren't very many females. Besides the point, you got to think about how am I differentiating myself in every stage of the process? Similar to how we think in our business, how do we make a great customer experience? And similar to how you probably think about that maybe in your own business, how do we create a great customer experience? You need to do that for the people that you're interacting with and think like that when you're going through the interview process. So how you follow up, how you reach out to them, how you thank them, how you communicate with them throughout the entire process. Think about it as a project and in figuring out how to do a really great customer experience. So I want you to think about that's all part of differentiating yourself. Now, the fourth thing that you could be doing that if you feel like you're qualified for a job and you're not landing a job is you're desperate. And this is an uncomfortable realization. So the question I want you to ask yourself is in your innermost being, are you so desperate for a job you can taste it? Because here's the deal. I understand we are in everyone says an unprecedented time. And I saw a really funny Instagram post yesterday that said, I didn't realize how much I loved precedented times before this. I think we can relate to that, right? So I know that we are in a different time in the world where it can feel like I just need the job and we can get into this desperation mode. But what that does is it changes your energy. And I'm not going to get into all of that type of mindset stuff. We've done plenty of episodes on that. But there is something wrong with your belief structure if you're living in desperation. And the problem with living in desperation is as soon as somebody talks to you, they are going to sense that, either subconsciously or consciously. You probably relate. Like if you've ever been on a date and you can just tell somebody is desperate, or if you've been out in public and you've watched somebody on a date, you can tell somebody's desperate in the dynamic, like it's uncomfortable. So for you, it happens the same instance, especially in interviews. If you're super desperate for the position and willing to take any salary, and you approach the questions in almost like thanking the interviewer in such a gratuitous way that doesn't feel authentic, like all of those pieces make your chances less. So if you're having desperation in your voice versus a hands-off, hands-up approach of, hey, if I get this opportunity, great. If not, there will be another opportunity that comes along and I feel confident in that. You need to shift away from the desperation and into a place of more confidence, because it has to be a renewing of the mind constantly, because if you're leaning into the desperation, someone's going to sense that and naturally they're going to be less attracted to you. You know this is true. You've seen it play out in your life in other relationships and dynamics. As soon as you start to feel, smug, like, what's the word? You're feeling like you're suffocating, right? You're going to be like, back up, buddy, or back up, lady. So the same thing holds true when you're in the interview process and in the job search process. So I just want you to be very cognizant of where you are on that spectrum. Are you somebody who leans into the desperation and panic and scarcity mode? Or are you somebody who, with the right work, because it doesn't come naturally to all of us, it doesn't always come naturally to me either, leans more on the abundance side of renewing your mind, leading confidently, understanding you have something of value to bring in so you don't need to sell yourself short. That's a big thing for women, of selling themselves short. And we see this especially in times where there's a down economy or something crazy is going on in the world. People start to panic and feel very out of control versus understanding that opportunities are endless. Opportunities are endless. And when you start to shift that mindset, and you might be listening on the other end being like, Jena, you haven't seen how many jobs I've applied to, and you haven't seen how many people have rejected me. I get it. But the reality is I was there too, but I looked at it very differently. When I was in the job search process, when I was trying to make multiple transitions, I was applying to jobs and a lot of jobs weren't getting back to me, but I didn't look at that as failure after failure after failure. I looked at it as when's the next opportunity coming? And I look at that way in my business as well. I'm not always good at it, but I will say that when I lean into that abundance, when I lean into the idea that there's another opportunity coming around the corner and trusting that, I am not going to show up on a sales call or a prospect call with a potential client and basically beg for their business. Like, don't go into an interview and beg for the job. And even if you're not like, please give me the job, there are ways that you're probably subconsciously doing that. So I want you to take a little bit of a pause. I want you to reflect back on your past experiences and ask yourself honestly, have I been desperate in the job search process? And is that the thing that's actually holding me back? Is that the thing that's keeping me stuck? And I want to clarify one thing too, because then I'll have a lot of questions from people where they'll say, well, there's a fine line then, Jena, between desperation and proactivity. And there is. And I think it's totally appropriate for you to reach out to people, consistently get in front of people, but not be desperate in the process. And in our Recruit the Employer, the course that's releasing again in 2 weeks, we're super excited about it. We teach you how to phrase things in such a way and to communicate things that bring value, but doesn't make you sound desperate. It's being proactive and matter of fact versus being desperate and needy. And so there is a fine line with that. But there's definitely some people that will just be so needy towards a hiring manager and, following up every 2 days or something. Like, we don't want to do that. There is a certain cadence that we recommend to reach out when you haven't heard anything, to continue the conversation, to keep building relationships over time so that this doesn't become an issue. So friends, if you are doing any of these 4 things, if you have a really inconsistent job search process right now or no process at all, if you're only relying on applying online, if you aren't spending some time really journaling through, reflecting and understanding what your secret sauce is and how you're differentiating yourself and creating that quote unquote customer experience for your job search. And if you're acting a little bit desperate, those could be 4 reasons that you are qualified, but you can't land the job. And I hope that this was helpful to help you start to rethink and reframe how you're approaching your job search and how some of the things that you're doing could actually be tripping you up and how you can take some proactive steps to shift, tweak, change. It doesn't have to be a total overhaul or something where you just shame yourself for doing it wrong. For the record, we talk about this all the time, but no one taught you how to do this. You went to college and you graduated from college and your career services center probably wasn't very good, or maybe you didn't go and the programming was out of date. It is not your fault, but it is your fault today if you don't take these bits of pieces of information and apply them. So I just want to encourage you today that there are opportunities abounding. I'm hearing about people getting interviews, people getting jobs, even in this economy, even in weird industries where you wouldn't think that would be happening. It is still happening. So keep your head up, keep moving forward. And I can't wait to see you next week in next week's episode. Hey, y'all, thanks so much for listening to Your Career Story podcast. I would love to get to meet you. And there are a couple of ways that we can connect in between episodes. First and foremost, I love my LinkedIn. Second is via Instagram. And third is over on my website. I actually have a special spot just for you full of fun, free resources. So all you have to do is go to www.jenaviviano.com/resources. Super simple, for a bunch of freebies that will help you boost your career. Hope to see you next week.